What's up everybody, Maran here for another car review. This is the 2023 Honda CR-V Hybrid. So about the all-new next generation CR-V here. Well, it's a really nice improvement in a lot of different ways here. And so the one we're looking at here is the Hybrid with the Sport Touring trim. So they've kind of split off the CR-V lineup here a little bit. So if you want a non-hybrid CR-V, your options are now an EX or an EXL. And then if you do want the hybrid thing, you can only get it here in the Sport and the Sport Touring trim. So very different flavors, but you know, it just goes to show that they're really positioning this hybrid as a sportier variant while still having lots of luxury features here with the Touring still as well. But overall, it's a really nice improvement, I think, as far as styling goes. You know, they made it a little bit sleeker there with those LED headlights in the front there, which are standard LED now. You also have a vehicle that's a little bit bigger now, so it's about 2.7 inches longer on a 1.6 inch longer wheelbase. It's also a tiny bit wider, 0.4 inches wider to be exact, and so just tiny little adjustments. But I mean, really, that length is one of the biggest changes. And so I mean, up front there though, you can really see that stronger nose there that looks really good. Now here you have a unique front bumper on the Sport and the Sport Touring, so you'll see you have those little cutouts there, almost look like intakes in the lower part of the front bumper there. And on the Sport Touring here, you have some chrome trim around those. They'll be just black for those little intake cutouts there in the regular Sport. So slightly different looks for each different trim here of the CR-V, and I think that's really nice to kind of separate them and differentiate them. But I also really like how you can see the grille and the way the front bumper kind of juts out around the headlights there, and the headlights are kind of set back a little bit. That's something you don't really notice in pictures, and I hadn't honestly even noticed it until I first saw this vehicle in person today. And so it has a lot more visual interest to it than it may look at first glance whenever you really get up close and start, you know, inspecting this thing. It looks really cool. I also love this darker blue color you have here. It really has a nice metallic flake and looks great. Another big visual change is that the A-pillar has been moved back almost 5 inches, and so it really gives you a longer hood here, some sportier proportions, and I think it's a really cool change that also does help visibility as well. Also coming down to the sides here, you'll see on these Sport models and the Sport Touring, you have the black wheels, you also have black mirror caps and even black roof rails there. It's a little bit of a darker theme, but you still do have some chrome like around the windows and things like that, so it's not all blacked out, but it is a very nice look, especially with the blacked out grille surround and things like that. It definitely gives it a meaner look and a little more aggressive than the regular EX and EXL trims. And then going out back there, I think they made a really nice change with the taillights there. So the same kind of theme with the D-shaped taillights you see and are used to on CR-Vs here, but now it has a little bit more visual interest there with a few other little LED accents within them. And you also see there in the lower part of the rear bumper, you have some chrome outlining for those exhaust tip finishers there, which does nicely mirror the front bumper and those you know, chrome outlines. But one thing to note though about those exhaust finishers is only the one on the passenger side there is actually a functional exhaust tip. On the driver's side there, it's just going to be, you know, kind of a block off thing. But I do appreciate the symmetrical look, and so I don't blame them for doing that. But just one little thing to note there is only one of those actually works as an exhaust. So overall, from every single angle, I think that this new CR-V is a really nice improvement visually. So for the 2023 CR-V interior, you'll see that a lot of it is shared with the new Civic and the brand new HR-V if you're familiar with those. But that's a very good thing because those vehicles have got a huge improvement in their interiors, and it's a lot of the same great components here in the CR-V. And so I think it's actually great that they share stuff because it's a really nice design. It's nice and clean and just very well laid out and easy to use. And I just really like this whole dashboard area, and most of this interior in general is very, very nice. So first thing, sitting down in these seats, you have these brand new seats they've redesigned here, and they say it has a more supportive design to them. And so yeah, they feel really comfortable. They have good bolstering, a little bit more aggressive than some other crossovers in this segment, honestly, but they really hug you in nicely, and they have some nice perforation. And here on the Sport Touring, you know, they are leather and have the orange stitching as well. One notable thing though is you have heated seats here in this top Sport Touring trim, but there is no way to get cooled seats still in any trim of the CR-V, no matter how much you pay, which seems like a missed opportunity considering most of the competitors these days do offer cooled seats. It's a very nice feature to have, especially if you live in a place that gets pretty hot. And it's kind of surprising this brand new generation does not have cooled seats still. A little bit of a disappointment, honestly, but anyway, still nice seats nonetheless. Moving on to the steering wheel here, it's really great. It has an awesome 9-3 grip, nice little 10 and 2 notches, and just a few buttons here on it. Nice and simple to use. They also have a heated steering wheel here in the Sport Touring trim, and it's great you have that. You also have these little regenerative braking selectors here with these what look like paddle shifters, but they don't shift anything. It just changes the regen, and that's something that they had in the previous generation CR-V Hybrid that I really enjoyed, and so it's great to see that those have made a return here, and that is one difference that this has over other hybrid competitors. It's so great you have that. Moving Moving on to the gauges here in the CR-V, they're the same kind of gauges you get again in the new Civic and new HR-V, and it's a really cool design. So you see this kind of started with the Accord actually a couple years back, where you have a digital portion there on the left and then an analog speedometer on the right there. And so it's nicely blended so that it almost looks like it's all digital at first glance, but it's not. But it's very well integrated. And on the left-hand side there, here in the hybrids, you just have a power meter, and then you can cycle through and have a bunch of information shown within that gauge. And so I mean, even it'll have your album art for whatever music you're listening to, navigation instructions, also your torque split for the all-wheel drive system, and even a power meter here for the hybrid as well, of showing how the power is being generated, where it's coming from. And so really cool that you have all that in there, and a really nice gauge cluster, nice and simple, but a good amount of customization as well. Coming over to the center of the dashboard here, right up top, you have this really nice 9-inch touchscreen display here in the top Sport Touring trims, and also I believe the EXL has this. But if you go for the lower trims, you're going to get a 7-inch touchscreen instead. And the one big difference between the 7-inch and the 9-inch, in addition to the size differences, of course, are that the 9-inch screen has wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto. If you go for the 7-inch screen, it is still wired in, unfortunately. But thankfully, otherwise, both screens work pretty similarly with, just having really good menu systems here that are customizable, with all these little tiles being able to be moved around or, getting rid of, so you can have it exactly how you want it and use all the things that you use the most, right in the front page there. And so great, you can customize all that. It also does have the smart shortcuts here on the 9-inch screen, which will give you intelligent suggestions and learn your behaviors and how you use this infotainment system. And it's great that it has that. It's also really nice. You have a nice volume knob. It would be nice to see a tune knob as well, but we only have a little tune rocker here instead. But I also love how you have this little tiny shelf underneath of the screen that's padded, but that's just a nice place to stabilize your thumb or another finger while you're trying to, tap on the screen and hit the icon you're trying to hit. And that is something, it's these little details that Honda thinks through that other companies miss, where other companies, if you're on a bumpy road, your hands just pogoing all over the place trying to stabilize itself, to hit whatever you need to hit. With this, you're always nice and stable, so it's much easier to use this touchscreen, in my experience, than a lot of the competing systems from other manufacturers. And so those little details are the things that Honda does, I think, better than a lot of the others. The last thing to mention about this infotainment system is that it's paired up to a 12-speaker Bose stereo here in the Sport Touring. And some of these new Bose stereos in the new Civic, that especially really was impressive. And in this, it's just as impressive. Now, this one, of course, is designed for the unique interior of the CR-V, but it's just such a good sounding stereo, and I was able to enjoy some music in it this morning, and it's really clear and crisp. It has the center point technology to kind of give you a little bit of a surround kind of experience. And in this segment, I would have to say that it is probably one of the top ones. I still think the CX-50 probably has a slight edge with its Bose stereo, but this is very close, and overall a very, very good sounding stereo, and definitely hands down way better than the stereos in the RAV4 and all the other competitors. And so anyway, just a really, really impressive stereo, and I'm so glad we now have a really good stereo in the CR-V, because in previous generations, you never really had anything branded. It was just Honda's upgraded thing. Having a Bose stereo here is really nice. Coming down, other little details, you'll see that there is a little bit of gloss black, piano black plastic here in this vehicle, but they've kind of restrained their use of it a little bit. So you have this cool texture here underneath the air vents, and I also love how you have this honeycomb insert that goes all the way across the dashboard there. Another thing I love is that you have these metal knobs for the climate controls, and those types of things, the nice click that you have whenever you use those is so satisfying. Again, another little detail that Honda thinks through that really very few other companies do. Mazda also kind of obsesses over button feel and things like that, but most others don't. And I mean, even the window switches all feel really nice. And so, everything about this feels pretty high quality, and just, again, very nice and simple as far as, the controls here for the climate and all that. One other thing in this area, though, that isn't the nicest feeling is that you have hard plastic right by your knee here. And, not everyone pads this these days in this segment, but some of the best competitors do pad this. And whenever you're on a long road trip and you're maybe using the cruise control and you have your leg kind of laying here up against the center tunnel here, it would be nice if this were padded, especially at least here in the Sport Touring trim. That would be a nice inclusion. And it's also surprising considering we just reviewed an HR-V interior not too long ago, and that HR-V, everything is padded. I mean, that entire center console in the HR-V is padded, and it was so plush feeling. And then getting into this, the upper, more expensive, Honda SUV here, to have a bunch of hard plastic all of a sudden is really surprising, because Honestly, I have to be honest, the HRV interior actually feels a little more premium than this does, in my opinion. For that alone, having all that padding everywhere in the HRV really elevated it to being really top of the class interior-wise. And unfortunately, this I don't think is top of the class. I think the CX-50 has a little bit of a more luxurious interior still, as do some of the other competitors, depending on how they're equipped. Another odd switch is that we now have gone back to a gear shifter here for the transmission selector, and that's fine. I mean, I guess maybe they're going for a sportier feel or a more traditional feel. Maybe people missed having the shifter. But the previous generation CRV hybrid, I really loved how it actually had push buttons instead of the traditional shifter you had in other CRVs. And it really made this area a lot more airy and freed up some space and was a really nice change. Other things though, storage space is very good here in the CRV. And so you have a nice large pocket here in the door with a bottle holder. In the middle, you have this wireless charging mat, which is okay. It is rubberized and has these tiny little lips here on the sides of it to try and hold your phone in a little bit. But I noticed here in my drive this morning that my phone still slid right out of that. And it's a little finicky with actually trying to get it in just the right spot for it to actually do wireless charging. So half the time my phone, even when it managed to stay on this mat, it still ended up not charging most of the time. So that's unfortunate, but they do say that whenever it is charging your phone on there, it is going to be a stronger and faster wireless charger than before. So a nice improvement there for that. I just wish there was maybe a little bit more of a wall there to, hold it in place a little bit. And by the way, my phone is an iPhone 13 Pro and it fits in there no problem. Larger phones might, not fit quite as well, but anyway, a nice space there. You also have two cup holders, a little cubby behind that, and then the center armrest, which is nice and softly padded and does feel really nice. And you open that up and you will see a massive cubby here, and it has a little removable tray at the top. But they say this is actually the largest amount of storage space here in a center console in this segment. And so, I mean, a really good amount of space. Honda always does a really good job with storage spaces. And so between this and the wireless charging area, I mean, you really do have a lot of places to put things here in the CRV. And so overall, really good amount of storage space up front here. Moving on to the back seat here in the CRV, one thing that is really impressive, and they had this in the last generation as well, but the way that rear door opens, before you even get into the back seat, that rear door opens almost 90 degrees, and that is really nice if you're getting kids in and out, or, baby seats and large, items like that. It's so nice to have that door open that wide, and I still don't think any of the other competitors in this segment have a door that opens that wide. And as far as family friendliness goes, I would say that this is the top of the pack as far as just that door opening on its own. But otherwise, whenever you get into the vehicle here, you will see that you have 0.6 inches more rear legroom than before. CRV was already very good as far as its rear legroom, but now you just have a tiny bit more space. And me being 5'9", sitting behind myself, I'd easily say I have like 5 inches of legroom to spare back there. Lots and lots of space, plenty of headroom as well. And also now for that rear seat, you have 8 different recline angles. So it can be really adjusted, a bunch of different ways, and so you can have it pretty far back there or have it nice and upright, whatever you like. But great that you have that adjustability as well. You'll also see that whenever you look forward, you have air vents and 2 more USB-C jacks back there. But interestingly, no heated rear seats available as well. So another creature comfort missing that some of the competitors do offer. Not sure why they haven't integrated that here, at least in these top trims as an option, but nevertheless, no heated seats back there for those rear occupants. But they do have storage cubbies there in the rear doors with 2 actual bottle holders built in. There's also a fold-down center armrest with 2 cup holders built into it. Cargo space here in the CRV Hybrid is also a nice improvement over the previous generation. So another benefit of this longer vehicle here for the new CRVs. So first off, that hatch opens and closes a little bit faster than before. It also has the kick to open thing you can do here on the top trims as well. And another thing though is you have about 3 extra cubic feet of storage space there in the cargo area than you had before, and so that applies to both with the seats up or the rear seats being folded. Either way, you get 3 extra cubic feet of space, and so really good amount of space there. Now here in the hybrids, the floor does not lift up. You have no spare tire here either in the hybrids. The regular CRVs do get a spare, but no spare in this, and so that floor is fixed, which is kind of surprising considering a lot of competitors do have some underfloor storage space or an adjustability to that floor. But this, it's fixed, and just the one set up there. But a really good amount of space, nice and wide, nice and tall. You have a power outlet back there, some lighting, of course, and all that. So overall, very family-friendly vehicle as far as cargo space goes as well. But let's start up and go for a drive. The CRV Hybrid here has this really nice new Honda key. They introduced this with the Civic, and it's so small, but has all the buttons you need on it there, and actually feels pretty nice and high quality still. And so it's just, I really wish other companies would copy something this small, because it's so nice to have it in your pocket and not have some massive key. But of course, it is keyless access, keyless entry, and push button start. So you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the power button, and it turns right on. Alright, so setting off here in the 2023 CR-V Hybrid. So the first thing you'll probably notice about this is the better visibility. Now, the previous generation CR-V had pretty good visibility as well, but this really is improved. I think they said it's a over 4 degree wider view, and they moved the A-pillars back almost 5 inches. And so what it provides you is just this more open and airy view, and just an excellent view forward. You have also the mirrors now that are on the doors, and there's a little bit of an extra space there between the A-pillar and the mirror, so you have a little bit of a better view around that mirror now than you did before. You also have a pretty nice seating position. You have plenty of headroom, and I am setting a little bit lower here the way my seating position is. You can get it nice and high, but regardless, you have a dashboard that doesn't come up too high or anything. It just gives you a really nice view of the road, while also still feeling like it hugs you in a little bit more. You don't feel like you're sitting on top of this vehicle like some other crossovers in the segment. This kind of feels like it cocoons you a little bit more, and just is a really nice driving position in my opinion. And you also have these new seats, which are more comfortable, and so it all just gives you a very nice supported driving position. One other thing though that I noticed right off the bat here about the CR-V Hybrid is that it's very proactive with the road departure mitigation. And so that system, will obviously monitor the road lines and make sure that you're not going over them. And that's great, and it's, awesome that it has that. But in this vehicle, the way it's set up, it's really overreactive, where I wasn't even on the line. I wasn't even actually that close to the line several times, where it would just constantly nudge the wheel. And if you're not like perfectly positioned in the middle of the lane, it feels like it always wants to kind of adjust, where you're at in the lane there to make sure that you're far away from those road lines. It's very safety minded. It just seems to be a little bit much, to the point that I just wanted to turn the system off, because I was like, all right, this is a little too much. And so just something, I wasn't super crazy about, but it's great that it has all the safety tech, which is now standard, by the way. Blind spot monitoring, all those types of things, the automatic emergency braking, the adaptive cruise control, the stop and go system, all that type of stuff is standard here in these. And it's great you have, Honda's safety suite here across the board, and really gives you, a very confident feeling driving down the road, having all those systems supporting you. And now we're out on a divided highway here. It's some highway speeds doing about 65 miles per hour. And one other thing I'm very impressed by right off the bat is just how quiet it is in here. So they went to great lengths to make this a little bit quieter for this generation as well. And so, you certainly can feel that. The CR-V was already one of the more refined ones in its segment. It was certainly quieter than a RAV4, for example. But this one builds upon that and just gives you an even more refined experience with, quieting down the motor, but also just as far as, wind noise, road noise, tire noise, all those things. You hear very little of that. And that's notable at 65 miles per hour. This road isn't rough by any means, but it's also not pristine and brand new, and yet it's really nice and comfortable. And I'd say it's certainly one of the quieter ones in its segment. And also, I do have the adaptive cruise control system on currently here, and it does have the lane keeping assist function on. And I really love Honda's lane keep assist system. Whenever you have that turned on here on the highway, it's one of the more confident systems in my experience, where it does a really good job of giving itself assertive steering. Now, obviously, it's still a hands-on system, and you still have to make sure that you're babysitting it and stuff. But I just found myself being able to relax a little bit more in systems with this Honda lane keep assist. It just does a really good job of staying within the lanes, not pogoing too much, not making you too nervous, or ever crossing the lines like I've experienced in some other stuff, like in Hyundais and Kias. Those will actually cross the line sometimes. This is always very safe feeling and trustworthy in my experience. Now I'll continue to test that out throughout the course of my day driving the CR-V Hybrid here, but overall so far it's just a really nice system. And also for this Honda safety suite here for the 2023 CR-Vs, you also now have a wider field of view for the cameras, so it does better prevention than it did in the past. So it's able to see things better and therefore react quicker and more intelligently. So it's great you have that. Also, while we're on the topic of safety features, beyond just the technology, which is what most car companies really focus on, is just, oh, it has all this technology, so you'll never even get into an accident. But Honda also focuses on, what happens if you do still have something where someone hits you, or there's something that's unavoidable. And they also have really improved what they call the ACE body structure here for the CR-V. It's a brand new generation here for the CR-V, new platform, and they've really made some nice improvements to strengthen the body. It's about 15% stiffer, and so that helps with impacts. They also say that the body actually interacts better with larger vehicles in accidents now than before. So they've really thought about how more and more people are buying enormous vehicles, and so this is going to interact a little bit better with those than in the past. You also do have a new airbag design, so the airbags now cushion your head a little bit better to prevent as much head motion for better protection there. There's also more airbags. You now have 10 airbags total, including knee airbags for the front passengers, and also side impact airbags on the rear seats there, in addition to the side curtain airbags you already have. So very, very safe, and it's just awesome that they focus on the impact stuff as well as just the technology side of it. And I review cars from all brands, but Honda is one of the very few that ever talks about the crash structure in their presentations, and I love that they focus on that. And so just keep in mind, if you are considering a CR-V, they really do put safety as one of their very first priorities, and they work as hard as they can to make these as safe as possible, and that's just really nice. But I'm going to put it up into the sport mode here, and let's turn down onto this straight road here and see how the CR-V Hybrid accelerates. Here we go. Okay, so sport mode gives you quicker throttle response and amps up the sound, the little enhancement that you get through the speakers here. And honestly, it sounds kind of good. And it's a good amount of power here for the CR-V Hybrid, so it is a little bit more powerful than before. It's 204 horsepower now, which if you're used to the old CR-V Hybrid, that was originally quoted at more power, but then they've changed the horsepower ratings and how they do that. So you actually get 3 more horsepower than before. It's also 247 pound-feet of torque now, which is 15 more pound-feet of torque than before. And so that's all comes thanks to partially the 2-liter Atkinson cycle naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine, along with 2 slightly stronger electric motors there in the front, and so they all work together to give you that combined output. And it's a good amount of power. It really has a good amount of punch, especially at lower speeds. The 0 to 20, 0 to 30, that's the type of thing where you really get that nice strong electric punch. And then these higher speeds are where that engine kind of kicks in to help you out a little bit more there and continue on with that acceleration. For your average commuting kind of stuff, merging onto the highways, things like that, it's going to be sufficient. And I think, again, if you're going for the hybrid, obviously this generation it's a little bit sportier, but also you're going for the economical choice. So I think this is a really nice blend of the sportiness and the economical here with the power delivery. And we were going up some mountain passes earlier, and something like that, you definitely hear the engine kind of kicking in a little bit more, especially since it doesn't have any kind of turbo or anything to rely on. It has to just rev that motor to make that power. But whenever you're doing the around town suburban type of driving, that's where these hybrids really shine, and especially the Honda Hybrid, because it's so quiet too. And so I think giving you these motors, which are now actually a little bit quieter, the engine itself is a little quieter, and also the electric motors and all that stuff, it's all quieter than before, so it helps to make this a little more polished than the previous generation for sure. Another couple cool little things here about driving the CR-V Hybrid, it does still have the regeneration selection paddles here on the steering wheel, which is something I really loved about the previous generation Hybrid CR-V, and I'm glad they've made a return here, because this is still something that basically nobody else in this segment really does. And I love that, because if you are someone who wants to get a little more involved in your driving experience, you can, and you can pull these paddles here when you're going down downhill grades and things like that, or even if you want to just slowly slow down in any kind of traffic, you can pull on these paddles here, and it has 4 different levels of regeneration for the braking, and it's great that you can kind of adjust that on the fly as needed and play around with that. And it's just something that me being an enthusiast, I enjoy kind of playing around with a little bit to maximize my efficiency. Now of course it will still do the regen if you're just having your foot on the brake pedal and doing that, but it's just cool that you can kind of rely solely on that regen if you'd like. But one new thing here is there's also a B mode here on the gear shifter, and so you can put it into that, and it'll essentially give you a 1-pedal drive mode similar to a fully electric vehicle. Now you still have to come to a stop yourself with the brake. It doesn't do 100% 1-pedal driving, but it does give you that 1-pedal experience. And once we're off the highway here, I'll test that out a little bit more on some more urban settings. But it's very cool that they're offering that as well, to kind of slowly get people used to electric vehicles, so that if they go into one of Honda's new EVs, in 2024 or beyond, they'll be a little more familiar with these types of things, and it's great they're kind of introducing that here in the hybrid. But we're on a little bit of a windier road here now, so we'll test out the handling here in this CR-V Hybrid. So they did gain a little bit of weight here, so they're about, in general, over a regular CR-V, they're about 200 to 300 pounds heavier roughly, and then compared to the previous generation, it's about 150 pounds heavier roughly again. So a little bit of weight gain there, nothing crazy, but just be mindful, it will be, obviously it's a little bit of a larger vehicle as well, and so a little bit heavier compared to the last generation CR-V Hybrid. hybrid. But as far as handling goes, they said that, of course, like I said, you have the stiffer chassis, and they also have retuned the suspension and the steering for better handling as well. And so we'll test all that out here and see. Also in the hybrids, one other cool little thing is you do get a thicker rear sway bar slightly, and so that should hopefully help with handling a little bit as well. And another cool thing is that you have an all-wheel drive system that used to be a 60-40 split with being front-wheel drive biased. Now it's a 50-50 split, so it actually makes it a little more neutral, still not rear biased or anything, but a little less front biased than before there, which is great. And so we don't have any super tight corners just yet. We're coming up to some in a minute here, but these sweeping bends, it does a really good job of, just feeling nice and tight. That's what I really love about all of these new generation Hondas. I really appreciate this even in the HR-V, the, Civic. They all have this nice and tight feeling to the steering. It's just like a Goldilocks weight, where it's not too heavy, not too light. It's just right. It just feels really good, and just everything feels very tight and buttoned down here with these. And so, obviously Hondas have always historically been pretty good handling vehicles in general, and the last CR-V was also, pretty good handler as well. But this certainly feels a little bit better. Part of that also goes down to that longer wheelbase, which has been stretched out by, a couple of inches there. And so that's going to give you a more planted and stable feeling as well, in addition to everything being stiffer and a little bit tighter and all that. It just means that it's improved in every single way. And so obviously, no one's going to be taking one of these to a racetrack or anything, but, if you do happen to find yourself on a little bit of a windy stretch of road here, it's just very confident. It's very flat too. It doesn't really feel like it's pitching around or, all over the place. It really feels well controlled and just gives you confidence once again, so that, even if you're someone who's not an enthusiast, just know that if you're, tossing this thing into a corner or some type of tight corner sneaks up on you, you got to hurry up and, steer aggressively, it's going to feel very confident and more than capable of, keeping up with you. And also this sport touring, you have the slightly larger wheels and all that, which certainly are going to make this one feel a little bit sportier compared to, some of the more relaxed setups you get in the other CR-Vs. But it feels really good. Doesn't really feel heavy, even though these weigh 3,926 pounds here for this top sport touring with all the, tech and stuff you have here in this. And it just feels really nice. I'm not going to, go on and on about this because it's not a sports car. I'm not going to review it like one, but just know that it just has very confident and very good feeling handling. And it is a little tough to compare since I don't have this back on my own back roads at home where I usually do most of my reviews. But, what I can say is, the CX-5 from Mazda was, typically one of the handling benchmarks in this segment, I think. And I'd say that this, feels a little lighter and a little leaner than the CX-5. And I think also just feels a little more planted. Again, I would have to take it on my own back roads to really do a better comparison and really drive them back to back ideally. But I would just say this is towards the top of the pack as far as handling goes. I'll say that it feels better than a RAV4 handling wise to me. And basically everything else that this competes with, I would say that this is definitely, if not the best, one of the top two in my mind as far as handling goes. Alright, so I've been driving the CR-V hybrid a little longer here, and I actually just had a chance to drive the previous generation CR-V hybrid for a little bit to directly compare the 2022 with the 2023, and I have to say that that really was illuminating for me and really highlights the improvements here for the new one. I noticed that this new one filters out so much more of the imperfections in the road than the previous generation. The previous generation, you were kind of bobbing around a little bit more. It was less stable. Again, it's fine. I'm, nitpicking and, doing the tiny little, differences between the two. They're both nice driving vehicles, but I just noticed that, I really feel that longer wheelbase. I know it's only about 1.5 inches, but, the larger size of this new one really gives it a more stable feel, but also just a smoother feel. It's also remarkable just how much quieter this is. It also helps, the previous generation, when you floor that one, it just sits at redline until you get up to whatever speed you're at, then you finally back off of it. Otherwise, it'll just stay pegged at redline. Whereas this, has a normal shifting kind of pattern to it and feels a lot more normal. But even whenever you're not flooring it, the engine is so much quieter here in the new one, and just everything about this feels so much more refined. It truly is is a very next generation kind of experience, and really a worlds apart between the two. It really was impressive to me just how much better this drives. The steering's tighter in the new one here. The visibility's better. The driving position, I also felt like I'm really enclosed a lot more here, and it kind of envelops you a little bit better, which I really like that feeling, versus in the old CR-V I felt like I was sitting on top of it a little bit, and it didn't feel great. I also, though, by the way, got a chance to drive the regular turbo version of the CR-V without the hybrid component, and did a quick little drive loop in that as well, and that also drives very nice. I definitely drove better than the previous generation regular CR-V, where that the CVT and turbo combo in that, I didn't love the tuning and the way they had that set up, honestly. And the new turbo CR-V, I think it actually feels a lot more natural, much like the turbo CVT setup you have in the new Civic, which I really enjoyed as well. And so I think that the non-hybrid CR-V is also a better choice than it used to be. The last generation I was like, definitely go for the hybrid. It's a much better drive. But here for this generation, since they improved the gas one so much as well, I think the gap is closed a little bit with this and the gas version and the hybrid. I still think I prefer the hybrid. It has a little bit more power. You have some nicer features, like even a loaded EXL version of the gas doesn't give you heated steering wheel, it doesn't give you navigation. You're missing some key stuff. The Bose stereo is only here in the hybrid, so they've really basically locked you out of some of these really nice features that people want, like a heated steering wheel, which shouldn't be a lavish thing, or the Bose stereo, which you have to get the hybrid if you want those best features now, which is kind of interesting and a very bold choice, honestly. But I think if you are someone who really wants those features, maybe you're not even caring that much about the hybrid thing, just know that the hybrid drives pretty similarly. They both drive very nice. I didn't notice the weight difference between the two or any wild differences. They both still drive very, very nice and still have this same great stability, quietness, refinement. So the last two things I mentioned here about the CR-V hybrid are the fuel economy numbers and the pricing here of the hybrid version of the CR-V. So first off, fuel economy, arguably one of the most important things if you're going for the hybrid version. So these are rated at 40 mpg in the city, 34 on the highway, and 37 combined. And that is about 1 mpg less than the previous generation, but that's also because this is bigger, it's heavier, and so that's to be expected, I think, and you're still only losing one. It's basically the same, and that's also considering you have more power, and yet you still have the great efficiency of 40 mpg in the city in this thing. And so that's very impressive. And if you do want to have the absolute best fuel economy, you can now get the hybrid with two-wheel drive for the first time. So you can get it with front-wheel drive, and those will get 43 mpg in the city, 36 on the highway, and 40 mpg combined. So if you do want the best fuel economy possible, that version does actually go beyond what you got with the previous generation, because again, it's the front-wheel drive. But that's great for places that don't get bad weather. You don't need the all-wheel drive. Go for the front-wheel drive one. You save yourself even more gas there, and so it's great that they're offering that as well. And so, yeah, overall, this new CR-V hybrid really impresses me. Just the new CR-V in general, both the gas and the hybrid here are super, super impressive. And it's also great how there's not much of a price gap between the two. So obviously you can't compare the trims directly because each trim gives you slightly different things, but it's only about $1,300 extra to go from the base gas version up to the base hybrid here. And so I think that's a very reasonable upcharge for the much better fuel economy you're going to be getting over the non-hybrid CR-Vs, especially if you do a lot of city driving, for sure. The highway difference isn't quite as big, but especially if you're doing a lot of city around town kind of stuff, that hybrid I think is definitely going to pay for itself pretty quickly. And so as far as the pricing goes here, now with the destination included, these hybrids start at $33,695, and that's for that sport trim. They also for the non-hybrid, they start with the EX now. They don't have an LX trim anymore. They say that's simply because there wasn't very much demand for that base model, and so they just figured they'd simplify it and just go down to 4 trims. So you just have the EX and EXL on the gas side, and on the hybrid side here it's just Sport and Sport Touring. And then this one, as tested, this fully loaded Sport Touring trim is about $39,895. And so I think at that price point it's a pretty good value. Now I wish there was cooled seats. I wish there was heated rear seats. There's some of those types of things that you can get for similar money in a CX-50, but of course that does not have the hybrid component. And you can get hybrid versions of like a RAV4 and stuff, which will give you those kinds of features if you pay for them. But the only thing is, with those, it's not as refined. You have a lot more road noise. This is a little bit of a more noisy highway we're on currently here. but you still don't hear too much, and like even passing cars don't make too much noise. And I certainly think that the ride quality and the refinement, the quietness of this is certainly a league above the RAV4. And so, the RAV4 has its own perks with, offering the cooled seats and a real panoramic roof, which this just, still sticks you with a small little normal moonroof. There are some advantages to the RAV4, but I think that, if you don't mind missing out on some of those things the RAV4 offers, I'd say this interior feels more premium. It's just, a little bit of a nicer experience to drive this than the RAV4 in my opinion. But the RAV4 is also getting a little dated, so it might be ready for a redo relatively soon too. But in the meantime, I'd say the CR-V is definitely one of my favorite picks in the segment, especially if you want something hybrid. I'd say it's certainly the best pick in the segment. There's not much to pick from these days. There's Tucson Hybrid, which is also, nice and a little bit more powerful as well compared to this. But I think that, the interior feels a little more premium here in this than it does in the Tucson. But the Tucson Hybrid is also a very nice choice for sure, but I just think this drives a little bit nicer as well. But yeah, so overall, I just really like this CR-V Hybrid a lot here. And, I think at its, price point, even fully loaded being, under $40,000 certainly helps it to undercut stuff like the loaded up versions of the CX-50 and some of the other competitors as well, which do cross over that $40,000 mark. So it's good that this is, still a little more budget friendly and just a really nice thing to live with, and I've had a really nice time driving it around today. But anyway, that's all of my thoughts here on the CR-V Hybrid. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Huge thanks to Honda for providing me here with the CR-V Hybrid to review for you guys today. And yeah, thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.